Wrapping up this week of the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, of course, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales, with some more baseball talk. Scott Warmann from the St. Louis Cardinals is going to hop on with us. He is the pre- and post-game host off of FanDuel Sports Midwest. It's going to be really awesome because I've been wanting to get more people on that aren't just with the teams that I cheer for, because I want to learn more about the Cardinals. I want to learn more about his career and just more about everything. And he does stuff for the St. Louis Blues as well, who of course won the Stanley Cup in 2019. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about everything from the Cardinals to his career to what they need to do in the MLB trade deadline here in about a month. So we'll have a lot of fun. Again, a huge shout out to Mike Mahon, who sent me an email earlier or later last week and sent me a message saying that this would be a great guest. Scott responded right away. So really eager to meet him and for you guys to meet him. But before we get to this interview, need to give a shout out to Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Great food, great drinks, and even better community over there at the historic Kelly's Little Nipper. It's been awesome seeing you guys continue to post on Twitter and Facebook all the great meals that you're having there, courtesy of listening to the show. So I really appreciate that, and I know Kelly's appreciates that. But they have trivia throughout the week, live music throughout the week, all this great stuff in a tiny little location over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. It's a perfect spot whether you want to sit outside or be inside and have a great time. Great food, great drinks, and even better community over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Kelly's Little Nipper, proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. Scott, we were just talking about kind of giving each other background information, and you were talking about all the areas you've gone to. You've been all over the place, and so you're still busy right now, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this show with me.
I appreciate you having me on, especially with all my good friends up in Des Moines. I appreciate it.
We need to get you back up here, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I was there for the softball tournament back in May, but maybe by the time we get to basketball season, I'll be back up there to actually officially meet you in person and see Mike Mahon and Laura Leonard and all the good people up there.
So it was interesting because when you're talking about your background information, your schedule's all over the place. Right now, of course, it's baseball season. So kind of what is your day to day? Like how early do you have to wake up for a game like this today with the Cubs coming and pitching at 1:15?
Yeah, normally a day can start even for a night game early in the morning. You correspond with your producers. For those that may not know, I host pregame and postgame shows on the TV side for the Cardinals as well as the St. Louis Blues. And so, we'll kick around ideas and then kind of go forward with that. Jim Hayes, who's been our longtime reporter for the Cardinals, he'll also chime in and have his ideas of what he's going to do, what interview he's going to be a part of our pregame show. And a lot of times when you have a night game, you turn around and have a day game. You try to get ahead of the game as much as possible because you're short on time. I know at times, and I haven't done it in several years, but when I also used to help Jim out and give him a couple of road trips off and do reporting, when you have a night then a day game, especially when it's a getaway day and you're on the road, you try to bang out 2 interviews on that day before the getaway day, because in the morning you're there, locker room's not open very long, and barring some unforeseen circumstances, you already want to get that interview that's going to run for the pregame show the next day already in the bag, because guys are ready to get out of town, especially if it's an end of a road trip or what have you. So yeah, it can start early in the morning, even for, like I said, night games. Quick story. So I was actually in Chicago. This is about 6 years ago. Cardinals were playing the Cubs, big rivalry. And one of my best friends, his daughter actually went to Columbia College in Chicago. And Tim's like, "Oh, are you going to be at the series?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, great. I'm going to be there because I'm going to be visiting my daughter." Perfect. I said, if you don't have a hotel room, you can stay with me, So he's like, "Great." So he did. So we got there Thursday. Game was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon. So It's about 6 in the morning, and I'm texting with my producer for this 121st pitch at Wrigley Field. You know all about this 121st pitches. And so my buddy goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm talking to my producer. We're preparing for the show." He just shakes his head and turns around, goes back to sleep. So then I'm taking a shower and ironing my shirt. I'm reading, blah, 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 grab something to eat. And I gotten tickets for him and his daughter to go to the game that day. So I said, "Look, I got to get on the bus." It was like 9 o'clock. I said, "I got to get on the bus and ride with the team over to Wrigley and start my day." And so left. So game's over with. You got to go back as a reporter, get sound from the manager, and normally at least one player, sometimes two, depending on the outcome. And so I get a text from my buddy Tim. He's like, "Where are you at?" I said, "Well, I'm still in the locker room, Tim." I said, We'll probably be done here shortly." I said, "I just got done talking to the manager," and the manager at the time was Mike Schilt, who's now with San Diego, obviously. And then I said, "Then we'll move on, and I'll take the bus back." So got back, and I don't know, it was like 5 o'clock. By the time we were done, traffic on a Friday afternoon in Chicago. So it took like almost an hour to get back to the hotel. I said, "You and your daughter just meet me at there's a deck outside with a bar. Just grab a beer with you." And so I got out there. I saw his daughter. She gave me a hug. He's like, "Man," he goes, "I didn't understand that you put that much time into a day." I'm like, "Yeah, we do." I said, "There's preparation. You just don't walk into a broadcast booth. You don't walk into a studio and just do a show. That's not how it works." So I think he had a new revelation, a new respect for what I do, but what we all do in preparing for each and every show. So that's kind of how the day goes normally. More times than not. As far as hockey's concerned, a lot of times for home games, you have what they call a morning skate. Teams skate for about 20, 30 minutes, and then you go in the locker room, and then you visit with the coach, go home. Some stay at the rink, but sometimes I normally go home, do my rest of my prep, get the rundown from my producer, and then be back at the arena about 2 hours before our pregame show starts at 6:30, and then we'll be done with the postgame show after 10 o'clock. So again, long days, but as I always say, it beats working for a living.
I was gonna say, a lot of people have that idea that, oh, it's sports, you just go in there and you talk about what happened,
Oh,
like it's not that hard, but there is a grind to it, and some people fall out of it because of the grind, they weren't expecting it. Do you remember when you were first starting, and was there a part of the grind that you fell in love with that you knew, okay, this is what I want to chase after?
yeah. Really, as I always say, I'm really blessed because obviously I grew up here, Justin. So it was the teams that I rooted for. So to be a part of that, whether it's been TV or radio over these many years, I'm truly, truly blessed. But the time and effort, as I always say, I've probably done more homework as an adult working than I did when I was school because I enjoyed this. I didn't enjoy doing English or math or social studies or whatever. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. But, as I tell people your age and people I've talked to that are older or younger than you, is the fact that, in order for you to have part of your success and part of your drive is to have the knowledge and the wisdom and the preparation when you go into your podcast or your radio show or your TV show or whatever. That's all a part of it. And on top of that, when you're covering a team, whether it's like here, the Cardinals, Blues with the Cubs up in Chicago, what have you, is if you're there, you're in the locker room, you're talking to people, and that is where you gain respect, not only within those organizations that you work with, but you also have a respect for the people that are watching or listening to you. And I think it's something that kind of gets lost. Granted, I'm associated with teams, but even people who aren't on radio stations or what have you that are not associated with these teams, I always tell them, men, women, doesn't make any difference. I said, if you're at the ballpark, they're going to give you, if you show up regularly, you're going to get some information because they see you, they notice you. And they're like, oh, that person wants to work hard. They want to get to know things. And then you have what's called a credibility factor. So you walk into a radio show or a TV show and like, hey, that guy, that gal, they know their stuff. They're there. They have the respect. Again, not only just from an organizational standpoint, but from the people that you're reporting to in that whatever metro area that you do. So I always tell a lot of people that's very important in your growth. If you're growing in the business, and people that have been there will tell you that that's the same thing. And preparation is such a huge part of it.
In terms of preparation, you've done play-by-play, you've done in studio pregame and postgame shows. How do they differ, and where do they kind of cross over?
I mean, for preparation, I guess probably for pregame show, I prepare just like I'm doing a game. Not like I should take that back. Not completely, because in a game, I have a half-hour pregame show where you have for baseball, a 2-hour, 45-minute to 3-hour game. So there's a lot to know, more nuances, more things in particular, certain stats, whatever you need to know. Today, the Cubs may bring up a guy that, in the minors. Well, in the pregame show, I'm not going to report that on the Cardinals show. The Cubs show you will, but not the Cardinals show.
Yeah.
But for a guy like Chip Carey, he's going to have to know some stuff. And so is Brad Thompson, who does the analyst work predominantly for our broadcast. They're going to have to know a little bit about this guy and know his numbers, and, if he's ever been called up before, what his numbers were down in the minor leagues, this, that, the other thing. So I think there's the game, the play-by-play is probably a little bit more preparation. But when you do it on the TV side, I think the most important thing, and we get the opportunity, not only myself, but I know Chip and even the radio guys, John Rooney and Ricky Wharton, they get to meet with Ollie Marmol every day privately. And there's a confidence that I was just telling you about that's built there. I've been involved in those conversations when I've been working, even doing just studio host for home games. And Ollie knows that, hey, there's stuff that's on the record, there's stuff off the record, but he knows and respects us, and we do the same. And so you have this built up knowledge, and the same thing goes when you do it for whatever sport. Let's talk about the Valley. I've known Ben Jacobson for 20 years, or however long, 20 years, I guess he's going into as the head coach at Northern Iowa. And so even if I don't make a shoot around, I know now that I can call Jake, or I could leave a message and he'll call me back, and he will give me, some insight on what he thinks about the game, his players, who's hurt, what have you. And again, that's building up, Justin, your credibility when you do this for a long period of time. When I first started doing it, it's not like, hey, Jake, this is Scott, blah, 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 blah. Who, But again, Jake and I have known each other for long. Brian Portal, another one who's been around the league for a long time over at Bradley. I know Brian he gave me his phone number. He's like, Scott, call me anytime. I'm like, man, I really appreciate it. But that, again, is one of those situations where you've built up credibility with these guys because you've been there, and you do a lot of stuff, not just for those particular schools and institutions, but obviously for the whole conference, like we do for the Missouri Valley.
One of my favorite questions to ask people that have had long and successful careers in this business is just, when was the last time you had that goosebump feeling walking into a stadium? Or does it happen on a regular basis? Every time you walk into Busch Stadium, do you get the goosebump feeling? Or when was the last time you had that?
Goosebumps as far as nervousness, or
it could be nervousness. It could be a mixture. Just that, because I remember, like the first time I was calling a game for Drake at Arch Madness, and just that feeling of walking into the Enterprise Center and being like, oh my God, I've been watching this on TV for, all my life, and now I get to be in the stadium to watch this is pretty cool.
Yeah. I do get, and it's not a nervousness and excitement when we're got to go on the air. I think we all do. It's like you're energized, but you do it so much. It's like, how do you do that? It's like you do your job and you don't think about it. Mm-hmm. Sure, there's things that happen. There's things that happen on the fly and you have to adjust. But again, that's part of preparation. So I'd say every time we go on the air, there's a certain type of an excitement. Uh, going to a game, being energized, doing Arch Madness, like you said, or even the women's tournament, because we've got some really good teams, obviously, with Allison and Jenny's teams at Drake and Tanya's teams up at Northern Iowa. So there's some nervous excitement. I would say part of it would be the last 4 years we've had our women's championship game that has been on ESPNU, but now it's on ESPN2 the last 2 years. And so Laura Leonard and myself have been asked by ESPN to do the championship game. So that's been a really cool moment and you kind of you try to at least reach for certain things you wanted to attain when you were younger, like when I was your age trying to get into this. So to be on a national telecast is always something really cool. And I know I found out later that the year before last, when Drake beat Missouri State in Moline with that last second shot, we had over 200,000 people watching that game.
Holy cow.
Pretty cool. I would say nervous energy. The one I remember that just off the top of my head, and I'm going back a ways, my first year, I did the pre and post game shows on the Rams radio network when the Rams were here in St. Louis. And to go to the Super Bowl and do part of the pregame and postgame and part of that, we were a little nervous. First of all, you didn't expect the Rams, who were terrible before that season, and then just runs this incredible run into, stardom and, America's team or whatever you want to call it. There was a little nervousness right before we started our 5-hour pregame show, but it was also an excitement to do it. Also, I would say first World Series when I was doing on the Cardinal Radio Network on radio back in 2011 when they won the World Championship there. I think the first time I did that, it was like, okay, right before we're on there, I'm like, wow, I'm really doing a World Series. This is really cool. I think being a part of the Stanley Cup Championship in 2019, I never was nervous. Obviously, after the first round, the second, third round, and then the finals are nationally televised, but we did still do pre and post game shows. But I really wasn't nervous. It was just so much excitement, because for the first time in my life, a team that I followed had made it to the finals. And so just to be a part of that, and we did shows, we couldn't do shows inside the arena for the home games for the Stanley Cup finals. We had to do them outside, just outside you've been to the Enterprise Center.
Yeah.
So right outside the main entrance. And so that was a pretty awesome moment to see, thousands of people just gathered around while ourselves and NBC and NHL Network and then one of the stations in Boston were all doing our shows on these stages. That was pretty cool. But I remember especially that Super Bowl. That was a little nerve-wracking. I mean, it was a little
understandably so.
Yeah. But again, incredible experience. Blessed.
You brought up former Drake basketball player Laura Leonard, and just as a play-by-play guy, as a broadcaster, how do you navigate, having different color analysts with you? Is it like a coach where you have to learn how to play with every teammate, every different teammate?
Correct. Yeah. And that's basically it is, and it's kind of, again, you do it so long, it's second nature. Same thing happens like for our Cardinal telecast. There's 4, maybe 5 different analysts that we have. So there's different ways. Like we have one guy that's just kind of starting out. So I kind of try to help him along. But there's other guys, you just throw up the softball and boom, that's it. Laura's the same way. She's so good. Well, Adam Emenecker is so good too. He's just a natural. And I've told Adam this when he first started doing some work with us. And he has an incredible future at doing this, but just working with Kevin Lehman or it's Rich Sabosic, or we had Mark Adams at one time, who's now doing stuff with ESPN. And I think he's doing a lot of American Athletic Conference games. I mean, it's just, you do games and yes, you have to prepare sometimes different for others, especially I know I've worked with men and women who did it for the first time. And so you kind of just have to, Jack Watkins, who's our senior associate commissioner in the Missouri Valley Conference, oversees TV. He has, some confidence in me that, hey, this is a new person. I've got confidence in you. Can you just kind of show them the ropes? I'm like, absolutely. Another one that comes to mind is the great Jackie Kalen from Northern Iowa. She also works with us, and she actually started doing some Valley telecasts this past year or two. And so I got a chance to work several shows with her this year, and she's tremendous, and she wants to learn. She's incredible. And I think the great thing, whether it's Laura or Jackie or Adam or Kevin or any of these people, is, again, their preparation. So it makes my job a lot easier, where you have a new person. And I'm like, look, and I've told these people, you got to come in and we got to talk to the coaches, and we got to watch a little film, what have you, because then it settles you down more when you're doing the game, because you know the game. And that's what I tell any analyst, whether it's Laura. I didn't have to tell Laura this because she's already done it, but you tell a lot of people, just tell me the game. You know the game. I'm going to tee you up and ask you questions about things. And you just tell us, and you tell the listeners or the viewers what you see out of the game. What maybe the coach told you that they wanted to do X, Y, Z, what have you. So, but I mean, working with Laura, it's almost second nature, because we've worked with each other for like 16 years now. So it's like, oh, it's Laura, we know each other's tendencies and all
Yes.
that. I know Laura, I love her to death. She's an incredible friend, but we were doing a game. This was many years ago. We were in Creighton when Creighton was still a member of the conference. And so we always tape our open to the show. So I always try to mess with her, because she does, I think she'll admit that she does get nervous from time to time. So she had, she's so prepared. And so she puts these notes up, and we're doing this open, and I took them down. As I'm rolling out, there's this scenic of Sokol Arena. It was new then. Sokol Arena is where the Creighton Blue Jays women's team plays. And I'm saying, well, as I rip this thing off, and Laura's like this. I said, hey, I welcome us. And I said, oh, the Laura Leonard, Scott Warmann. I said, Laura, what a great game. Oh, fantastic game. I said, well, tell us about the Creighton Blue Jays and whatever player, blah, blah, blah. And she rolls through it. And then I segue to whoever they were playing, roll through that, and then we go to the break. Boom. She looked at me and she goes, I wanted to punch you. I said, you know what, Laura? I'm teaching you a lesson. I said, you're so nervous. You shouldn't be nervous. I said, you're so good at this. I said, and what happens if I didn't pull that up? What if something came by and those notes went away? She goes, I don't know. I said, you do know, because I just pulled those away and you know exactly what you're talking about. And afterwards, after she was angry with me, but I was teaching her something, she doesn't use notes anymore.
Well, because she's also probably afraid you're going to take them again.
Maybe so. No, because I know she's worked with Brad Wells and other people, and she just knows it. But it's just a sense of confidence thing. But again, I've learned that as well. I did that when I first started. One of my buddies, who's a good friend of mine, who does the Blues games on the radio for like 25, 26 years now. And I was sitting there and I was doing the pre-game for one of the Blues games years ago. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this thing, and he's like, what are you doing? I go, what do you mean? He goes, you're reading. He goes, it sounds terrible. He goes, you just do bullet points or just tell us the story. You know the game. You're here every day. And he was right. He was exactly right. He nailed it. And from there on, I never used any notes. I had people like, you read a teleprompter? No, I just know it. My producer gives me a show for pregame. I'll go through the rundown, and when I walk into my studio, our studio, I should say, 2 hours before the show starts, I already have an idea, barring some late changes, of what I'm going to say, how I'm going to transition things, and how I'm going to tee up my analyst for the show. And Al Raboski, who is now getting ready to go into the Cardinals Hall of Fame, rightly so. Even when we first started working together full blown, because he was doing a lot of pregame and postgame on top of doing the analyst work for the Cardinals telecast, he goes, your radio experience has really helped you on your TV side, because you can ad lib And if we need to stretch things out, you're so well prepared that, you don't need to read everything right out of a teleprompter. I said, yeah, you just make it sounds more natural when you're doing something like that. Now, again, it takes time to do that. I'm not telling everybody just go ahead and do it. Some might be just so terrific that they can do it right out of the box. But yeah, I that's the one great story about Laura. She was so mad at me, but she thanked me later. She's like, "You taught me something, and you were exactly right. God bless her soul." She's awesome.
I do want to transition into kind of the future of a few things that we're seeing with the media world right now. So just kind of like, what's the future for regional networks now that cover professional teams? Because I mean, in Iowa there are no professional teams, but for a city like St. Louis, kind of what is the nature right now of those regional networks?
Justin, it's a great question, um, and I wish I could give you an honest answer. I don't know. I mean, you see a lot of these national writers slash publications that are completely writing off cable and regional cable, but there's others that are saying, let's put on the brakes here. Everything seems to be, sliding towards streaming, obviously, but a lot of these companies, these big corporations that have streaming are saying we're losing millions and millions of dollars. Well, how much can you afford over time? Now, how much is it in its infant stage? I don't think anyone directly knows. And case in point is the direct to consumer that I think ESPN is putting up. I thought I read it's like $29.99 a month. Obviously, ESPN is the creme de la creme. They have basically or almost everything. But are they going to get enough people to buy into that? I think we're in a transition period and people are trying to figure this thing out. There are a lot of people that have cut the cord with cable because of cost factor. And I've had friends that apologize to me and they're like, look, we don't really get to watch the Cardinals and the Blues games because we just made a decision as a family that the kids aren't watching, the cable TV or TV at all. They just have their cell phone and that's how they're watching the streaming and everything. I think ultimately this is it. When that time comes, I don't know. Probably, obviously, people your age, when you guys get a little bit older, I would imagine that there will be more people subscribing. The one thing that comes to mind is as a kid growing up here in St. Louis, I remember when cable was just in its infant stage. And so when ESPN came on, when my mom and dad purchased cable here in town, I'd sit there and watch ESPN. And this is when they didn't have baseball. They had a little college basketball, maybe a little college football. They had, pool, darts. I was amused by the whole thing.
Yeah.
Or the other thing that my buddies would come over and we would watch MTV because that's when all they did was play videos. And it was just like, wow, you were mesmerized. The other cool part of back in the day, probably your parents' age, is being here in St. Louis. We used to watch all the Cubs games and Chip's grandpa Harry and Steve Stone. We used to watch the Braves games, and we could also watch the Mets games, who were a big rival to the Cardinals in the 80s at WWOR TV in Secaucus, New Jersey. And so that was also a cool thing. But my point to the whole thing is back then, cable didn't cost anything at all. And then all of a sudden, prices just going up and up and up and up and up. And the point to my comment here is the fact that what makes all of us believe that, okay, I'm going to get Netflix and I'm going to get Amazon and I'm going to get Disney and I'm going to get Peacock, Paramount, whatever. That's going to cost. And the price is going to eventually go up. So we're just kind of recycling things from a streaming standpoint eventually than what we've done from a cable operation. So as I try to go way in the past when I might not even be around, what's that next thing? I don't know. But I would say there's a lot of uncertainty. I think everything is going to streaming, but there's others that are saying hold on. We're just in this transition period and people are trying to figure things out. And I know it's been a wear and tear on a lot of people in my industry, our industry, because you're kind of sitting in the unknown instead of, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, there wasn't any uncertainty. Now we kind of live in uncertain times as to, what's going to happen next. And I think you're going to maybe potentially see some changes within the next few years, because I know at least the MLB contract is up nationally after the 28 baseball season, as well as the NHL national contracts as well. So I think that will really gauge us into what is next into the future, as far as at least those two sports are concerned. I know NBA just finished up a mega deal. You see a lot of stuff on Amazon. There's no local broadcast for the first round of the playoffs in the NBA like we saw before, which I think is a shame. But obviously, I'm a part of that from an NHL standpoint. We get to do the first round. We don't get to do any playoffs if the Cardinals would make the playoffs, or Cubs, or any team. It's all nationally televised. But with all that being said, I would say streaming right now, not with 100% certainty, but that seems to be where we're going. I know FanDuel Sports Network, from what I understand from other people that work full time at our corporation, and specifically here in St. Louis region, is they have the new app, the FanDuel Sports app. And so the direct to consumer purchases has gone up exponentially from what I've been told from last year to this year. I mean, we apparently have had a massive amount of people that have bought into the FanDuel Sports Network sports package once the Cardinals season started. So, and I'm sure that's probably the case with a lot of other regionals around the country. And so, yes, I would say cautiously that might be where we're probably heading, but I think it's still, we're just kind of in this feeling out process right now.
I don't want to take too much of your time because I feel like I've already taken way too much of your morning, but I do want to get to a little bit of the Cardinals talk. Just where right now, a week before the start of July, where do you rank the season so far for the Cardinals? Is this kind of what you guys expected? Is it below expectations? Kind of where are the Cardinals sitting right now?
If we were grading like maybe, I don't even know what they do in school now, A, B, C, D, F, what used to be a grade, I would give the Cardinals an A. And I'm not saying that just because obviously I'm part of the broadcast. Everything that they have done has probably exceeded everyone's expectations. And I'm not just talking about the wins. Obviously, wins and losses are the biggest thing. But I think the style in which the Cardinals have played, I'm an old school guy. Okay, we use analytics. I don't think analytics are the end all be all in baseball, but that's where it has been trending. I still think that you need to have the basics. You need guys who play the game to teach the game to these kids. But to see the Cardinals from a fundamental standpoint, running bases, fielding, pitching, which I think has really exceeded a lot of people's expectations. They're not playing long ball. It's not a home run or strikeout type of game for the Cardinals. In fact, I think they're one of the lowest home run hitting teams in all of baseball. It's about moving runners over, hitting in clutch situations, which they were not very good at last year, and they succeeded this year, at least up to this point. So I give them an A for sure. I think that no one saw this Cardinal team sitting there right on the heels of the Cubs for the top spot in the Central Division. The Cubs went out, they got Tucker, they went and got some good ball players. They're a good ball club. Pete Crow Armstrong might be one of the new stars that we have in Major League Baseball. The kid's an absolute stud. But I think that no one expected the Cardinals, maybe even to be in last, but to be there right now, midway through the season, I think has surprised not only people here locally, but I think on a national basis. And tip of cap to Ali Marmol, especially because, with the low expectations, things could have really become unraveled here in St. Louis. And with this city with high expectations, because as I always say, the people here within the region, I mean, Cardinals reach out far beyond just the St. Louis scope of things. You know this, up in Iowa, there's Cardinals
Oh
fans.
yeah.
I've
Oh yeah.
done games in Des Moines or even Northern Iowa. I've had Cardinal fans come up and ask. Most of Missouri, Southern, Central Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee. We go to Murray, Kentucky for a game. That's all Cardinal country. I sat there. Steve Prohm, their former head coach, who's a huge Cardinal fan, before one of the Racers games, and after I got done asking him a couple questions about his team, we sat there and talked Cardinal baseball for 10 minutes. I mean, that's how
He
big
was
of a Cardinal
interviewing you
fan
then. He
Steve
was
is.
asking you his set of questions.
Right, exactly. Our friends who unfortunately are leaving to Conference USA, but every time I go down to Springfield, that's massive Cardinal fans. And I had people come up after every game, whether it's Laura and I doing a women's game or whoever doing a men's game, football game, whatever I would do. They're always, hey, what's the Cardinals doing? Whatever. So it's a big time regional thing. But to get back to my point, I don't think the expectations were very high this season, even though there's been so much success for so many years. We're truly spoiled. I know there's some Cardinal fans that are offended that I or somebody would say that, but we truly are. The amount of success, the amount of Hall of Famers that have streamed through this ball club, not only within just the last 20 plus years, but you can even go back to the 40s, 60s, 70s, 80s, just some amazing times that we've been able to have here as Cardinal fans, baseball fans here in St. Louis. But this has really been something special. And I think Nolan Arenado said it the other night after the victory on Tuesday against the Cubs. He said this is the most fun he's gone to the ballpark in 2 years. And so to see a guy, excuse me, of the caliber of Nolan Arenado being re-energized, I think says a lot about what these guys and this team have done as a whole. A lot more baseball to be played, but it truly has, Justin. It's been a really fun time to watch Cardinal baseball again, and I think fans are pretty excited because you have a lot of young guys on this team, and so there's hope for the future as well.
Yeah, and with that future, I mean, are the Cardinals going to be buyers or sellers at this trade deadline? You bring up a guy like Nolan Arenado. That's a name that gets floated around of potentially trading to try to get some future picks and some depth there in St. Louis. So kind of what's your thoughts with what will St. Louis do here in the next month?
Great question. Let's not forget that Nolan Arenado was traded to Houston, and he rejected the trade to Houston during the offseason. So he has a full no trade clause. He basically gets to call his shots. I would say that the Cardinals still want to get a lot of these young guys what they call a runway opportunities. You see guys like Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, who's out now because he had an appendicitis during the game on Tuesday and he had to go to the hospital. But apparently he's okay. That's good. Mason Wynn, who's an incredible talent at shortstop. You've got Victor Scott, who's really emerged in center field. Brendan Donovan, you would imagine, probably going to get a long-term deal. So there's a lot of young guys that I think hold a lamp to a bright future, and I think they still want them to get the opportunity. Alec Burleson's another one I failed to mention. Give them the opportunity to play. So from a standpoint of an everyday position, I would be surprised if the Cardinals would add to any of that, unless they want to try to get like a veteran bat off the bench or something like that. Pitching might be something that they might want to look at. But I think they want to try to keep this whole thing together, again, as much as possible and give these young guys as much of an opportunity so they know, okay, this guy's coming through, so we're going to keep him. And maybe this guy needs a change of scenery. Maybe we can deal him. Because the one thing after you look past 2025 is the Cardinals have a lot of pitchers that are off the books. Some might be resigned, some may not. A lot of these guys, especially in the starting rotation, are getting older. So I think they're probably going to have to look at trying to acquire one way or the other by a free agency or trade to load up on pitching. They do have some pitching down in the minors, but not as much to fill the bill of what they have from a free or soon to be free agent standpoint. So I think that'll make this offseason interesting, from that perspective. But from another perspective, John Mozeliak, after many years as the GM and president of baseball operations, he's now retiring. And so Chaim Bloom, who oversaw the minor league and was the GM of the Boston Red Sox, did so with the Tampa Rays as well. He takes over those reins officially after the end of the season. Guy's got a great resume. So I think that's really interesting to see what ownership and Heim will do once he takes things over. Because I know, talking to a lot of people who are with the ball club, been really impressed with how Heim has at least been given the opportunity to oversee the minor league system. And so they brought in some people and they've upgraded not only from a coaching standpoint, but from an analytical standpoint. And I know that there's been a lot of positive response with the guys who've been within the organization for the last couple of years and have already noticed a huge change. So I think that's a big positive for this team moving forward. So yes, to answer your question in a long-winded form, I do think that if they're still in it, I would look for them potentially to try to maybe add a little bit of pitching, but from an everyday standpoint, unless it's a veteran, a bat off the bench, I just think they're going to continue to let these guys learn. And that's the only way you can do it. Just like you're learning in this industry. You know what? I learned that in an early age. You got to just go out and do it. And you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from your mistakes as well. But if you don't do it, you're never going to know if you actually are going to attain some of those goals that you want to attain. So it kind of goes full circle with all
that. To wrap up, I got 2 favors of you to ask. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of pressure here. Megan's my girlfriend. Her sister lives about an hour outside of St. Louis, and we always go down for July 4th and around Christmas time. Can you get the Cardinals to play the Cubs in St. Louis every July 4th week and then get a St. Louis Blues home game during Christmas time?
Let me work on that, Justin.
Because we went, man, it was probably about 4
years ago. So you're telling me
ago.
You got a little family Cubs Cardinals kind of thing going on there.
They're not huge sports fans, her side of the family, but they are Cardinals fans now since we went to Busch Stadium. I'm the lone Cubs guy. But we went it was probably about 4 years ago. First time I ever went to Busch Stadium. Beautiful. Loved it. I will go back in a heartbeat.
Good.
And Cardinals destroyed the Cubs. And I remember it was good. Megan's. No, it wasn't good. I remember Megan, it was her first major league game. And we're leaving the stadium and she's like, man, I don't watch a lot of baseball. Is it normal for there to be that many home runs? And I was like, no, that's just the Cubs bullpen for you. But we haven't been to a Blues game yet, and we would love to go to see an NHL game because I've heard they've been incredible.
It's incredible. Well, to me, it's been a secret for a long time, and I did sports radio for a while too here in town, and I had a caller. Regular, awesome dude. His name was Alan. And he called in one morning. This is 20 some odd years. And he said, Scott, I love you, but man, you talk a lot of hockey. I said, well, the Blues are in the playoffs. This is kind of a big time, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah. So got done with the phone call, go to a break. And my producer goes, hey, so-and-so from the Blues is on the line. And he wants to give Alan a ticket for him and his son to go to tonight's Blues playoff game. So go back on the air. I said, Alan, you need to call back. So-and-so, the producer. I said, Blues just called. They want you to go to a Blues game. Okay, great. So the next morning, I literally walk into the studio and the lights flashing, the phone. And I asked my producer, who's that? He goes, it's Alan. He already wants to talk about last night's experience. So I said, look, start of the show, my partner, Jay, I said, we got to get out. He goes, absolutely, get Alan. Get Alan on. He goes, oh my God. He goes, you have 2 new hockey fans. He goes, that is some of the most intense stuff I have ever been a part of. I said, dude, it doesn't relate to a lot of people, even with we didn't have the high definition TV. It's helped. But unless you actually physically go to a game, and more importantly, if you go to a playoff hockey game, you are literally on the edge of your seat, barring some unforeseen circumstances for the entire 60 minutes. And if it goes long, and literally the next day, as Alan pointed out in his phone call, he goes, I'm worn out because of the intensity of the 60-minute game. I said, it's something else, isn't it? He goes, oh my gosh, just the build-up, the speed, the physicality, the whole 9 yards. So let's hope you and your girlfriend come down, and we'll try to see if we can get you some tickets, because playoff, especially if you can get playoff hockey, which is tough. But if we can, you'll be a fan for life. I guarantee it, because playoff hockey, I even have some of my baseball cohorts who played the game professionally, like, man, playoff hockey is just at a completely different level. I'm like, yeah, it's really intense.
It comes through on TV really strong. Like you feel the intensity, but I can't imagine what it's like to actually be in the arena. But yeah,
it's been the arena. I don't care what arena you could be in. The Enterprise Center. You could be up at the United Center, which is a massive complex up in Chicago, or TD Garden in Boston, wherever. And I mean, the place will literally be shaking.
We just need to get the Blues for the past 4 years. I mean, it's been ever since, I think we jinxed it as a family, being like, hey, we should go to a Blues game when we come down for Christmas. And it's been like the day we're traveling or the day we're leaving is their one home game. And then the rest of the week they're on the road. So we're like,
you have to stay a little bit longer, Justin.
I guess so. Darn, we'll just have to take more vacation time.
There you go. That'll work.
But Scott, seriously, thank you so much for doing this. This was amazing. Definitely won't be the last time I annoy you. That's for sure.
Anytime, man. Appreciate it.
Well, you have a good weekend, and hopefully, if you come up to Des Moines, or maybe if I were able to catch up in St. Louis sometime, that'd be fun.
Absolutely. No question about it, buddy.
You have a good one. We'll stay in touch.
Take care. Thanks.
A huge thank you to Scott Warmann of the St. Louis Cardinals and St. Louis Blues for hopping on the show, and Mike Mahon for setting this up. Really appreciate it. And it was a great interview, and definitely won't be the last time we will have Scott on the show. I'm going to try to just start getting through the Central Division. Brewers, Reds, Pirates up next, hopefully. So start checking them off the list, because while I am a Cubs fan, I do love just hearing stories from everyone in the league. I love hearing what's new, what is happening. It helps me as a Cubs fan understand the teams that they have to play up against. And I understand that people listening to this show aren't all fans of the teams I'm fan of. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. I really appreciate it, and continue to like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that good stuff. But before we wrap up, need to give a shout out to Stevens Automotive and Sales at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated in the state. They're loyal people, good people over there at Stevens. They communicate effectively once your car's in. I mean, they keep you updated on when you can expect that car back and what's happening and what you need to know to be safe on the road. And then finally, and one of the biggest reasons I go there, is there's just no BS. It is so easy to go over there and get work done at Stevens Automotive and Sales. The holiday is coming up next week, so Megan and I, we're hitting the road. I'm sure you guys have some travel plans as well, and if you do, go get your car checked out at Stevens Automotive and Sales, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated, and proud sponsors of the Media Row podcast. Before we wrap up, need to let you guys know about our huge guest coming in on Monday. So I told you guys earlier about how in the summer, I want to get people on that have inspired me, and that includes people that are outside of sports journalism. So I'm a huge hiker, camper, kayaker. I love being outdoors. Absolutely love it. And I've been trying to get Megan, and I mean, it's part on me too. But we've been trying to see more national parks as much as possible. And so with all this stuff happening, in our country right now, I wanted to bring on someone who has had that experience, and someone that inspired me since I was in high school. Outside of the sports journalism world, it is Pete McBride, who is a photographer for National Geographic, has a lot of experience with the Grand Canyon and national parks and traveling all over the world. So really excited for you guys to hear that interview. That will be released on Monday, and you guys can hear it then. So really excited for this weekend. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We will see you Monday with Pete McBride from the National Geographic.